Welcome, one and all, to the High Performance Human Podcast. It's your man, Andy, here, and I am delighted to be joined by a colleague, counterpart, brother from the fraternity of auctioneering. But I've not just brought any brother along. I brought one of the very, very best. Justin Nickerson is the director of Apollo Auctions. He is a three-time Australasian Auctioneering Champion. And for those of you that don't have a clue what that actually means, basically, he's gone up and put himself up for judgment against the very, very best in his craft and come out on top on no less than 3 occasions across Australia and New Zealand. He is, without doubt, one of the most impressive professionals when it comes to his chosen field. And aside from anything else, the way that he goes about his life, I mean, I've gotten to know Justin quite well over the last few years, and we've become friends and whatnot. But the thing that really impresses me about Nico is, mate, you seem to be almost unflappable, and you seem to have this sort of air about you. And I was conscious not to mention this to you before we hit go, but you seem to have this air about you, mate, that I know that you will have issues and dramas and you'll get pissed off from time to time, as we all do. But the way in which you broadcast who you are and how you go about it is really quite impressive in its consistency. Really, really impressive, actually. But like I said, team, he is at the very, very top of his chosen craft, which is no small feat. If you think about what you're doing in your line of work, whatever it is that you do, or whatever it is that you are passionate about, to be able to say that you are officially the best takes some doing. Justin Nickerson, a very warm welcome to the High Performance Human Podcast. How are you, my man?
Yeah, much better after that lovely introduction. You can keep going if you like. I'll sit here and listen to nice things all day. But no, that's very kind words, mate, and thank you. I very much appreciate you saying that, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you.
Pleasure's all mine, man, and it's long overdue. Now, the reason why I've resisted the temptation to get Nico to come onto the podcast is because for many of you, you will know, but for those of you that don't, I am a huge geek when it comes to many things, but a lot of my geek comes from the craft of auctioneering. I'm a massive proponent of it, and I'm an auctioneer over the course of the weekend. But Nico he's next level in many respects, in just the way that he goes about his craft. And one thing that I think I'm hoping that you're going to get from this conversation, team, aside from anything else, is that in order to become the best, you're going to have to work your ass off for it. It doesn't just happen by accident. And Nico's definitely a shining example of that. But I also want to dig into Justin, and how we can find the energy to do what we love to do when it's obviously the thing that we should be doing. I mean, like everyone talks about finding their true calling and whatnot, but this is something that I want to dig into a little bit more, because having had a few conversations around intuition recently, I think this is something that will be quite fruitful. But Nico, before we crack on, if you can give everybody that doesn't know who you are a bit of a wrap in terms of what got you to this point in your career, a little bit of a genesis story, if you may.
Yeah, it feels like a long time now. I came out of school not really knowing what I wanted to do, like a lot of people. I think sometimes you've got a good idea of what you don't want to do, but what actually you want to do is more challenging, which was certainly me. So I worked for the AFL for a time through Central and North Queensland in sort of recruitment development roles while I was at university, but sort of kind of had that itchy to kind of, I guess, wear a nice suit, drive a nice car, have a good occupation, I suppose. And the calling when you don't have a university degree to support those ambitions is usually real estate. Mm-hmm. So I was very much the cliche in that regard. I started as a sales agent in real estate. I sold for sort of 4 years. And then at the latter part of that, I sort of discovered auctions as a method of sale and discovered auctioneering as a craft as well. And was very lucky. I had some I guess kind of shining examples of what I'd like to be as an auctioneer and highlighting it as a viable career path. I tried to do both, tried selling and being an auctioneer for a period of time, but as everyone's discovered, I'm sure with different experiences in their life, when you try and do two things, you end up doing them both as inferior versions of what you should be doing. So I made I guess now in hindsight, a seminal decision to become an auctioneer, which seems in hindsight an easy decision, but at the time was incredibly difficult one for a variety of reasons, but made that decision to becoming an auctioneer. One of the biggest drawbacks was I wasn't particularly good, but that didn't stop me. So I thought, let's go in boots and all. And I'm coming up now. This is my 15th year of being a full-time independent auctioneer. So it has been a long time in a lot of ways. It's been a short time in other ways as well, but it's been incredibly rewarding, challenging, engaging, like every adjective you could use to describe it. It's been all those things and more. So yeah, very, very grateful and thankful for what it's brought to me and sort of, I guess, the life that I lead today because of it. But it has been, it's a cliche, but it's definitely been the journey that's probably shaped the ending, I suppose.
And you are a proud dad of a couple of kids now, and you've been going along this journey and discovering fatherhood and whatnot as well, which is always, I mean, it's a challenge at the best of times, but when you're running your own business and whatnot as well, and do a job that in fits and spurts, auctioneering more so than a number of occupations, it requires your whole and soul attention, especially obviously when you're calling an auction, your brain's nowhere else. And so to have that sort of shifting of gears to be able to go from dad to business owner to auctioneer, back to business owner to dad to auctioneer, it has its challenges for sure. And I can certainly attest to that myself. When it comes to you said then when you were just giving us a bit of a background, you said that it was a hard decision to pick, sales and auctioneering. Like, what was it that made it hard? Because that was clearly a real strong fork in the road that played a massive role in what's happened consequently, right?
The hardest part about it was that I needed to have belief without any evidence. So I needed to believe that I could be a tremendous auctioneer, or certainly not even a tremendous auctioneer. I needed to believe I could make a livelihood from this without any evidence to suggest that that was a way possible. I had visible examples of people that done it, but they were people that were way more down the line than I was in terms of experience, talent, relationships. So it was that kind of evidence without belief. And that's always the toughest decisions to make, is you're making things based upon what you hope it's going to be rather than what it is, or what you feel it is at that moment. So yeah, that was probably the biggest decision at that point to my life that I had to make. And again, now you look back and go, oh, it was easy, right? Like, I'm an auctioneer.
Yeah.
I feel like I've filmed it, but it took me a long time to grow into that role. And even when I first went across, it's not like I became an auctioneer and, everyone was ringing me saying, oh, yep, you're the answer we've been waiting for, like it was a struggle for a long period of time. But it's those are the decisions I think that ultimately really sort of shape your life. It's we call them the decisions that you make, that you're making upon belief, but no evidence to back up that belief.
How many times did you question it?
It's a really good question. One of my biggest assets and liabilities is I've got a dreadful memory. So I actually, sometimes it's very helpful and sometimes it's very a very negative trait I have. But I imagine in the early days, my first 12 months were really tough. They were tough in terms of what I was getting in terms of results and what I was getting paid and all those kinds of things. But they were probably close to the most enjoyable 12 months of my life, because I think there's something really to speaking about when you're fully engrossed and enthralled about learning something new. And that was me at that stage of my life. I was single as a Pringle, no kids, no responsibilities. Like my one thing in life was I wanted to get better at this thing I'd sort of delved boots and all into. And I think when you immerse into it, it's a really kind of enjoyable and passion-filled time. So I don't know if I ever would have questioned it based upon that I thought didn't feel like I was enjoying what I was doing, but the results took a while to come. So I think that's probably one of the strengths I have is generally when I commit to something, I don't really look down the other path and wonder what if. And that probably served me well in that regard, I reckon.
Oh, for sure, for sure. When you talk about this whole belief without evidence, and I know we're already going down a bit of a track, but I think we should. This whole belief without evidence suggestion. Now, for a lot of people, they will have a desire to want to go do something, but because of the lack of evidence, they really struggle to take that leap. You mentioned then it can be that leap of faith, or whatever you want to call it, whichever cliche you want to call it. It can be the thing. It ends up being the thing that ultimately defines you. When you had that tough decision, because I'm guessing that when you were a salesperson at that time, you had consistent money rolling through. You were probably relatively consistent in your activity as a salesperson then, or was it a case of, well, geez, it's going okay, but it's not going fantastic, therefore it made that decision a little bit easier?
I think it depends on what you compare it to. I think when you look at someone that hadn't gone to university, hadn't really applied themselves, hadn't bounced around, the money I was earning as a real estate agent was probably pretty good. But when you looked at it compared to what other people were achieving, it wasn't that good. The biggest advantage I had was I was selling in an area where I grew up. So I just knew a lot of people through school or football teams, or my parents had a business there for a number of years, or my grandparents, I just knew people. So I got to put me through relationships, not through skill. So that probably made it easier that I wasn't walking away from an incredibly successful career. Yeah, it's funny. My parents, I bring this up a lot. My parents wrote me a letter saying, basically, I don't think you should become an auctioneer. I think you've done the hard yards in real estate. That's where you should remain. And that point was 100% fair and valid at that time, because there was no evidence I was going to be great as being an auctioneer, but I probably got through that really tough part as being a sales agent. And now I was going, okay, not amazing, but I was going okay. And their love and concern obviously is for your well-being. So I just think it's people in that holding pattern, and I've been there, and I'm sure we all have in some way, shape or form. The onus is on you to create the evidence. Like, you've got to go and actually create the evidence, so then you start to believe even deeper. If you sit there and say, well, until the evidence comes, I'm not going to do it, the evidence will never come, because the onus is on you to create it. So, and that, it speaks to that never die wondering, I suppose. So, yeah, I think it was probably an easy decision in terms of financial to do it. It was more the fact that there was just not a lot of evidence to suggest I was going to be great at it. I wasn't an amazing public speaker. I'd never done debating at school. I'd never been down that path. So I was going to have to learn to be a reasonable public speaker in a job that demands public speaking. See other people have got a natural gift or talent for it. They've done Toastmasters and they've done debating, or they're just really good orators. That wasn't me. So I had to start from the other end and kind of work my way into that well.
Why? What was it that made? What was it within you? You said that you mentioned there that you have a bit of an asset to be able to commit. Once you made the decision, you commit to it. But where was the hunger coming from? Was there a belief that you'd come across something like a one-eyed belief that even though you thought you were shit at the time, you thought, you know what, I know that I can make this work?
Yeah, there's just something to it. There was just something to it that just grabbed me, and I thought I'd be okay at it. I don't really know. The thing that really I still love is negotiation. So negotiation is my favorite part of being an auctioneer, without question. And as an auctioneer, you get to negotiate all the time. So that was the thing that drew me in more than anything else. I just think I saw what an auctioneer did, and I really liked that. Some people say on a surface level as well, they drive a flash car and they roll in and they yell at numbers and they jump back in the car and drive away. It wasn't really that. It was more like, this is kind of the finishing touches, that this person turns up as a specialist and gets to deploy their special skill set at the 11th hour to sort of have a high impact. And that's kind of what really drew me into it. Now, sometimes that can be through hopefully the delivery of our call, nice descriptions and bidding. But most of the time, particularly in Queensland or Southeast Queensland, where I've sort of done my trade, it's very much a negotiation. It's you walk into a bedroom and you've got an owner that is probably a little bit above the market. You go into the other room, the media room, and the buyers are there and they don't want to pay market. And it's your skill set that's going to hopefully impact to get that together. That on day one, that's the thing that I love doing. And today on year 15, that's still the thing that I really enjoy doing as well. And that's been the thing that's kind of drawn me back, I think, time after time.
We're going to dig into that a little bit further, but before I get into too much trouble with the old editors, I need to ask you the question that we always ask all of our guests, my man. High performance human. I believe that there's 4 elements: success, connection, influence, and happiness. What's your definition, Nick? I was someone that it can very much say that they are a high performing human in their chosen field. What's your definition?
The word I would keep coming back to is alignment. So I think for me, a high performance human is one that has alignment through the different facets of their life that all perform at a reasonable level. I don't think you can ever have any of so I say I wear 3 hats. I've got the hat as an auctioneer, I've got the hat as a business owner, I've got a hat as a husband and father. So for me, being a high performance human is that each of those hats I'm performing at a good level. There's no point in me being the best auctioneer that I can possibly be if I go home and I'm giving my wife and my children the worst version of myself. So the alignment for that is really important. And I draw back to 2021 for me is such a great example of a year. 2021, prior to this year, is my best year in terms of pure auction numbers. So in terms of financial performance and auction numbers and everything was my best year. But I would say, and at a personal level, it was one of my worst years. I was the most unfit that I'd ever been. Mentally, I was just struggling with the demands of workload. We had a daughter then, she's a year or so old. Adjusting to being a father, I wasn't probably a wonderful father. I wasn't giving my wife the support that she probably needed either. So I'd argue there in 2021, although I may have been a high-performing auctioneer, I was probably a low-performing human or husband and father at home. And that's really been a focus of me this year, is making sure that no one of those 3 becomes out of alignment. So every one of them has their role to play, and I've got to be in alignment for each of them. So that's probably, with some recency bias, because it's been a focus of mine this year, that's what I'll probably lean on, is not having an area in your life that drags the others down, I suppose.
Very, very interesting, man. Your answer is probably the closest to my answer. I got the question thrown at me by Sam McLean, thrown back at me. And your answer is probably the closest to my answer, because I said my answer was that it was a human in flow. And an alignment is not, it's the first time that someone said that word. And it comes to any of these we've had so far. We've done 50 plus episodes. There's people talk about consistency and all that sort of stuff. But you're absolutely spot on, man. And unless
I was say on that, just I was going to say, cut you off there, around the consistency is the word that I use more than anything else. I think consistency is the number one attribute or behavior, I think, of a high performer, is they're consistent in what they do. But for me, high performance means alignment. But I don't think alignment comes without consistency. So
yeah, I agree.
It's having fundamentals to your day to sort of feed that in.
But it's more so the consistency in how you turn up. And it's kind of what it aligns with what I said about you in the first place, right? The fact that you turn up in the same way in every scenario, which is really, really impressive. So it makes sense, and it obviously shows, because you are the most in demand in your craft in the country, and it's justified, right? It's you've earned that spot. You haven't bought that spot. You haven't flashed your way to it, right? You've earned that thing, right? So, and it all comes from that alignment piece, which is absolutely amazing. Now, coming back to what we were saying before, to the conversation we were having before about wanting to, being happy in what you do and all that sort of jazz. I wanted to ask you the question, because you keep saying that, day 1 or year 15, you still really enjoy what you do. How important is it to be enjoying what you do in order to be able to maximize your potential within that skill set or job or whatever?
Can I give you the honest answer?
Yeah.
I think enjoyment is overrated sometimes.
Why?
Well, because I think the ability, the really deep ability for you to do your job is the ability for you to do it on the days that you're not enjoying it. Now, enjoyment will fuel growth and passion, but that's never going to last forever. Like, if I sat in front of you, I say today, I'm as passionate about jumping out the front of going an auction as I was in 2009, it would be a lie and it'd be disingenuous. Do I still like doing it? Absolutely. But do I have the same absolute hunger where I was going to bed practicing and waking up practicing as I did in 2009? Absolutely not. But that enjoyment only fuels you so far. I think for me, the measure is the days that you don't feel like doing your job or something, you're a bit crook or you've, at home you had a rough night's sleep or, you had a really brutal workload or whatever it might be. Those days, if you can still perform on those days, that's actually the measure of someone I think that's really good at their job. So enjoyment is a clear factor that helps, but I actually think enjoyment is somewhat overrated because I think if you only are doing it when you're enjoying it, then that'll run out and you'll be off to find the next thing that you enjoy. There's a place for enjoyment, no doubt, with hobbies and things like that. But if we're talking about your actual career, it'll be the days when you don't enjoy it, when you can still, deliver outcomes that'll really define you.
That's a really, really interesting answer. And it's in many respects, it's incredibly valid. I think that it's almost like an equivalent sort of description of passion versus purpose, right? You could say that, a passion is all well and good, but a passion is going to run out unless it's got some fundamental foundations to it that allows you to turn up. Like I said, I mean, a very, very, very quick analogy that you normally say when it comes to the option side of things is you're not defined by the easy ones. You're defined by the hard ones. And that's where quality shines through. That's where skill set shines through. It's where all the hard work shines through as well. I think hard graft is great to take advantage of when times are good, but the hard work sets you up for when the times are not so good. I think. And when you do have forces that are going against you, that's when you need to be at your strongest in order to move forward. But I really like that. The enjoyment is overrated because I think there is perhaps too much vernacular in society these days where it's almost like you have to love what you do or you have to, be happy with everything that you do all the time. And if you don't, and it's sort of contributing towards this lack of longevity in a certain career path and the inability to be able to commit to something for a prolonged period of time, which definitely holds people back for sure. I mean, you will have seen yourself, and we're going off on this tangent now by the looks of it. You've seen in yourself the amount of auctioneers that have come and gone, that have come, given it a go, and then just slowly drifted out as the excitement and the novelty of it sort of worn off. Is there anything that you have noticed in the people, and we're talking in the last sort of five or so years, have there been any consistent traits in those that have stayed the course that you've recognized as someone that's had the longevity in a career that you've had?
You mean in an auctioneer sense?
Yeah, like in a professional sense, is there any sort of common traits within any of the people that you've seen that have stood the test of time?
Yeah, I think from an auctioneering landscape, I think the thing that everyone loves about being an auctioneer is they see the vision of the person turning up. Like, for example, on a Saturday, I might turn up an auction. I'll either, let's say 10 to or quarter to, I'll hop out, I'll look around the house briefly, I'll have a bit of a chat, I get out the front of a crowd's all looking at me, yell out some numbers, maybe there's a bit of negotiation, maybe there isn't, we then get to knock it down and sell it, everyone claps, they see me then jump out of my car a couple of minutes after, drive away, and they go, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. What they don't realize is that is the end product of 15 years of relationship building, to have those 15 minutes and someone trusts me to come into that space and do that. So from an auctioneering sense, why most people don't stay the course is they don't want to do the work that takes to get to that point. And we say to our team, as you know well, Andy, is we say your first 2 to 3 years of being an auctioneer, you are a professional relationship builder who occasionally will get the payoff of calling an auction. You're not an auctioneer yet because you won't have the volume to be an auctioneer. You're a professional relationship builder. It takes years of earning people's trust to get to a point where you are an auctioneer. So, what year now are you in auctioneering, Andy?
No, I started in 2012, yeah. So 12
So,
years.
12 years, and now you're calling hundreds of auctions, and the people would trust you to be in front of their crowds because they know that you're not going to say something that's offensive, racist, detrimental to their brand. Like, they know you're going to close deals when they can't do them. They know you're going to be entertaining, but it takes time to earn that trust and the respect to do that. That's just for one person. And then you got to get it for 2 people. Then you got to get it for 50 people, and then for 100 people. And, so I think any auctioneer that's achieved really long-term success in independent auctioneering in particular, I've got huge admiration for. Damien Cooley is a great example of that. Damien has built an incredible brand and business where, he's well trusted in his marketplace. And, he's done it from doing a really good job consistently for a long period of time. So I just think it's that staying the course that's there. Now we can get all, boomer and say, well, it's the new generation. They don't want to stay in jobs this long and things like that. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, but I think it's just understanding what your role is going to be for those first few years. Be prepared to work through that to get to the result on the other side without giving up is probably the really important hallmark, I think, from an auctioneering sense of what you need to be focusing on. Your call won't be as important in the first year as your willingness to get on the phone and handle rejection. If you're a 10 out of 10 at getting on the phone and handling rejection and brushing it off and continuing to go, and your auctioneering is a 4 out of 10, you will call more auctions than someone whose auctioneering is 9 out of 10, but they're a 2 out of 10 and handling rejection and then 1 to 8. So you've just got to be not so bad you don't lose opportunity. That's the first hallmark, but you've got to be on the phones to create it is the most important thing.
Interesting saying that. I mean, and you can take this and transpose it to pretty much anything, really, because I've been saying more recently to salespeople in training that we're so focused on scoring a goal, on the outcome, that there's very little focus on the 3 or 4 passes or steps that it takes in order for you to actually get in a position to have an opportunity to score a goal in the first place. And you can apply that to almost anything or any role or any business or almost anything in life. Like, I think it's possibly because we see so much of the end product in our faces on your Instagrams and so on and so forth, right? Everybody sees the product, and I'm trying to stay away from the cliche. It took me 15 years for my 15 minutes of fame or whatever the saying is. But I think this is a really good way of highlighting that in a micro sense, a very big macro issue in order for you to feel the things that you can see people feel from doing a certain thing or doing a certain task or having a certain skill, there needs to be a payment for that. Whether it is in blood, sweat, tears, time, money, whatever or a combination of all of them. It's really critical, team, that you understand right from the very start that anything worth having requires effort. It requires work. You talk about relationships. You talk about your, significant others. It's not always going to be a bed of roses all the time. You're going to do stuff that you really don't want to do. I mean, suck it up, princess. You're going to have to carry the shopping bags every now and then, right? But at the same time, it is the payment for a much greater benefit that comes into your life. And what Nico said then is absolutely spot on. I really want to ask you about being calm in
the next question. Can I just pause on that? Where you said enjoyment before, what I really think you need to enjoy is you need to enjoy the client. So the grind of getting you to the position, that's what you need to enjoy. So the down and dirty of actually creating the role, that's the bit that needs enjoyment, not the things that naturally kind of give you enjoyment, which is, knocking properties down and crowd steering you and so on and so forth. Sorry, mate.
No, for sure. No,
next question, you're all good.
No, it's a really valid point. It's actually a really valid point. It's almost like the enjoyment is almost a distraction from the thing that gives you, again, it's passion versus purpose. the passion can distract you from the thing that gives you purpose in the first place. Which I think is a very, very valid point. Passion is fleeting. Enjoyment is fleeting, as Nico said. But fulfillment, I think, is something that we all would prefer. If we had a box of enjoyment or a box of fulfillment, we would probably go for the box of fulfillment 10 times out of 10, right? Because the enjoyment's going to make you feel happy for 10 minutes, but the fulfillment's going to make you feel happy for a hell of a lot longer, and make you feel a lot more calm. What it sort of ties in, I think fulfillment leads to peace in your life as well. And I've been speaking to loads of people recently about bringing in peace in your life. And I think what you've said about alignment, because I think if you don't have alignment in your life with regards to each element of your life, then that friction is going to remove peace. You know, that lack of congruence within certain elements of your life is going to lead to tension getting built in the joints between those elements, right? That's a fascinating little insight that we're sort of developing here, which I think is going to be really, really important for a lot of you that are listening to this. I want to talk to you, though, as well, about being calm in the chaos. Now, have got a very visceral, very, very physical, very tangible version of being calm in amongst the sea of chaos, right? Our job, that is essentially what we do, right? We're the ones that are there to take it through the storms and whatnot and get it over and get it out the other side, right? What is it, do you think, within your own DNA that allows you... Well, let me start again. Let me ask you this first. Do you get nervous before every auction?
No.
Or a little twinge?
No. I'll explain it. And it's not because I don't care. For me, nerves coming from a feeling like something's going to happen here that I can't control or navigate through. And I'm now confident enough that I can navigate through, if not every scenario, then almost every scenario at an auction.
Now, on that then, as we segue through to the next question, is what do you think are the things within your DNA or within your being that allows you to feel that level of confidence? Because there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And I think arrogance is when you are kidding yourself into thinking that you know everything that you need to know, right? What is it you think within yourself that allows you to remain calm during all of that?
I think, well, first, I'm probably lucky that it's my personality. We did an auctioneer mentor session early this week, and we were talking about how I think the best auctioneers are authentic versions of themselves. So whatever their hallmarks are as people, them as an auctioneer is a representation on a bigger stage of that person. And I think as a person, I think that I'm pretty calm naturally. I'm pretty calm, I'm pretty relaxed, and I'm pretty quick to humor in terms of hopefully on my feet. And as an auctioneer, they're kind of things that I've tried to build my career around. So the calmness is it's something that's pretty natural to me. So it doesn't feel like it takes effort or work to be that person. I've always got a goal, and that's that I'm the least emotional person at the auction. Again, not through not wanting to care or get a great result or anything like that. That's sort of by the by. But if I'm thinking calm and I'm thinking logically through things, I'm going to be able to produce the best outcomes. We always say that the crowd at an auction will take the auctioneer's energy. So whatever you are as an auctioneer, the crowd will be that back at you. So if I'm calm and I'm smiling and I'm relaxed, that hopefully helps the crowd to say, you can be calm and relaxed even in this stressful situation. But the flip side of that is if I'm a really loud and aggressive auctioneers, and they've probably got less and less these days, but there's still some out there that are really loud and hostile, and I'm the auctioneer and I'm going to yell really loudly, even though it's a small room, and it's all based upon aggression and volume. The crowd becomes that back at you. It's impossible. If someone yells at you for 10 minutes, it's impossible not for you to want to yell back. So if an auctioneer is agitated, for example, they've had a blew with their partner and they go and call an auction and they're just a bit edgy and agitated and they're a bit snappy, that's where the crowd would come back. If the auctioneer is nervous, the crowd becomes more nervous. So for me, the pre-auctioneering competitions, there's 3 things I always used to write down on my page: smile, relax, enjoy. So if I smile, I relax and I enjoy it, then funny state enjoyment, it's actually word I wrote in front. So smile, relax, enjoy. If I do those three things, the crowd will respond to me in the best possible way they can. And that'll actually make my job easier in the scheme of things. But the calmness is just kind of always been, sort of, who I am, I guess. It gets tested in the home, particularly with a 4-year-old who, throwing her weight around. And, I think if I could be calm in the face of a 4-year-old who's having a meltdown and can't be reasoned with, then, buyers or sellers on a Saturday or a Friday or a Sunday are pretty easy, I think, by comparison.
True. And I was going to ask, what is it do you think that tests you the most?
Other than my daughter?
Yeah.
My daughter's actually really good. You shouldn't say that. Testing and most.
This is on.
Where one of my favorite sayings is, you can't reason with an unreasonable person. So what tests me the most is unreasonable people. So people that won't listen or won't engage in a dialogue with you, they're the ones I find most challenging. Like if I sit in front of an owner and I say, look, we've got this offer, I really think you should be looking at it. And they sit there and they say, you know what, Justin, we acknowledge and recognize that's probably what our property is worth. We understand that. We just can't really sell for that because we want to do this, this, and this, and we can't do that if we get that amount of money. We understand that's not the buyer's responsibility, but that's just where it sits. I get that. Like, cool. But if we have all the evidence in the world and you sit there and say, nah, they're all wrong, and don't want to have any sort of reasonable dialogue, that's what I find testing. It's the same as a buyer. We walk inside of a buyer and we say, look, we're going to have to increase your offer a little bit. We're not increasing. Cross your arms, we're not increasing. And like, well, guys, you've got to work with us here, because if the problem we've got is that owner right now has what you want. So if you don't change your scope, they're going to continue to retain the ownership of the things that you want. We're trying to help you and work with you. But if you just cross your arms and say we're not moving, then they're not going to move, and then the whole thing is going to go to pieces. So yeah, that's probably the biggest one, is unreasonable people. Just remembering that it's a very emotional day and state auction, so we just got to be mindful of that. That's all.
How do you find when it comes to you being calm, and I think sort of we've alluded to it in the sense of being calm is pretty much part of your DNA, right? You're calm at home as best as you can be. You're calm at work. You're calm in your role. Calm as a business owner. I really want to try and break down, because for a lot of people, they can see that sometimes calm can be misconstrued as don't give a shit. And you've mentioned it twice already. Like you said, it's not like I don't care, but, have you ever had any instances where your calm demeanor has been misconceived as lack of care or sort of lack of desire?
Really good question. Not said to me. So it may have happened, but I wasn't just made aware of it. I think, like, we take the example of the duck, right? The duck that glides along the surface while the legs are paddling underneath. That's quite often the auctioneer in an auction. Like, we want to be calm, but at the back of the mind, there's things that we want to happen, and we're trying to push things along or whatever it might be. But I just think calmness in most cases is a really, really good asset to have, because it just allows you to breathe. And I think the other thing I think that underpins that calmness is I'm really grateful for where I've arrived at in my personal and professional life. Like, I'm really grateful that the decision that I made 15 years ago has led me to where we are today. I met my wife charity auction. How's that for a cliche for an auctioneer? So I met my wife in charity auction. So like everything that I have in my life, other than my family I was born into, everything I have in my life from that point forward, I owe to auctioneering. So there's a deep gratitude to auctioneering for what it's given to me. And I just think about, like, what's the worst that could happen? If this auction doesn't sell, what's the worst that could happen? Or in our business sense, if, something goes wrong and we lose a client, like, my life is still way in front of where I ever thought it could potentially be. So like the fullback position is pretty good. I took back consistency, and this might take a different path. But the three things that I start each day with is, the first thing is some sort of movement. So I like running. Actually, I don't like running. I like what running gives me. I hate running, but I like what running gives me.
You've not got the longest limbs in the world, so it'll probably take you twice as many steps from it.
It does, mate. Yeah, it definitely does. So movement is one. I'll always change my body temperature. So I've got an ice bath at home. Best thing I've ever bought a full setup an ice bath in the start of the year. It's 3 degrees every single morning. I go in there for 3 minutes. Two things it does. Number one is it wakes me up. The second thing is, though, it is something I don't want to do. So I start my day by doing something that I don't want to do that's hard, which then sets my decision making up for the rest of the day, that I won't dodge hard things. But the third thing that's the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is I write in a journal every morning. And sometimes it can be a couple of sentences, or sometimes it can be a couple of pages, depending on what's going on in my world at that particular point in time. But the thing I like about it is it firstly gets things from my head onto a page. So they're not consuming me in my mind, because I can kind of put them on a page and look at them like an eagle view, like from the overarching thing. But the second thing it highlights to me is how small problems are in hindsight that felt large at the time. So I'll write something down and go, oh, this is the biggest problem I've got right now, and it's huge and it's consuming me, and I write it down. And then I'll read back, a year later or 6 months later or a month later, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I've forgotten about that. Like, it just reminds, it's a great reminder that things that go on aren't all consuming. So I guess that calmness also is underpinned by the fact that, you know what, if this doesn't succeed, or that doesn't work out, or that does, like, life is okay, and I'm still well in front of where I ever thought I'd be, and I'm grateful for that fact.
I think that there's a few things to unpack there, team. Firstly, let's start with the last thing. The journaling piece is something that I don't think has been talked about enough on this podcast, to be perfectly honest, and I think it perhaps needs to be talked about a little bit more. With respect to your journaling, do you have, to get technical for a second, do you have any sort of set structure, like, you write down 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that you need to work on, or anything like that, or you just go blah, 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 and just put stuff out?
It probably depends on my mood. So, like, for example, what day of the week is it? It's Thursday today. We're recording this. Tuesday, I just wasn't having a great day Tuesday. Just little niggly things, like nothing major, but just little niggling things. And it just felt like everything was kind of accumulating. And so I went to my journal in the afternoon, already written in that morning, and I went there and just sort of unloaded the things and said, here's the things that are annoying me, put them all down. And then underneath that, I just wrote, here's the things that I'm grateful for right now. And like, my grateful list was like 4 times the list of my things that were niggling me without sort of even trying. So just little things like that. But no, most days it's more just a representation of, this is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm feeling about, me or my life, or any of those 3 hats I wear. Here's something that's annoying me, like whatever it might be. And again, some days it's really brief, and other days it's really long. It just depends on what's going on.
Yeah, fair play. I think the perspective, you call it an eagle perspective, it's so much harder to assess situations when you are so consumed by them. It's so much more difficult to be able to do that, and it's so much easier to, once you've downloaded it, to be able to see it for what it actually is, as opposed to the grand version that you've got in your head going. Journaling is something that needs to get mentioned a lot more on this podcast, so I'm really glad you brought it up. The other thing I really want to mention, highlight there as well, team, is the gratitude that Justin has, is, it's not bullshit. I think you can feel a lot of the time, some people talk about gratitude like they feel they have to. I think sometimes it's a play on perception for a lot of people. But with Justin, team, and if you do any amount of homework on him, you would soon see that there is a genuine depth of gratitude to everything that he does. And I think from your side, what I really like, and I think it's probably going to help you most from a fatherhood perspective, because I dare say, because of the way that you go about it, Is it right for me to say that you actually, if you do have any problems at work, you find them quite easy to leave them at the door when you get home? Or are you sometimes susceptible to taking them inside?
No, I'm pretty good at that. One of the best things I did this year was be better at setting boundaries. So, um, for example, I only a couple of months ago stopped doing Sunday auctions. So Sunday became a family day. I will not be on my phone on a Monday, which is my day off and my day generally to spend with the children. I take a little fella swimming and trying to handle my daughter in the afternoon. So, yeah, I think and that's something that hasn't come easily. Like that's something I really struggled with was that balance. I always had this kind of nagging feeling that wherever I was, I should have been in the other place. If I was at home, I should have been at work. If I was work, I should have been at home. And it's been something I've not come easily that I've had to sort of work upon. But I just think that I really want to, and it's something I'm still not perfect at, but I want to be as present as I possibly can. While we've got a couple of young children, those days aren't going to last forever. And I was talking actually, Andy, before about, tonight, I'm not sure how after this you release it, but tonight's Halloween. And last year I did trick-or-treating with my daughter. She loved it. Like she's 4 now. She adores trick-or-treating. It's probably her favorite night of the year, like right after Christmas. And because I didn't block it out of my diary, I'm actually working tonight instead of going trick-or-treating with her. And it's something that I sad about because it was such an enjoyable time last year. It would have been enjoyable. We had matching costumes picked out, but that's my fault for not setting that boundary early enough, or I put that in my diary. And yeah, these are lessons we continue to learn. I guarantee next year now I'll put Halloween in there straight away, and I will for the next 4 or 5 years while they're still young enough to really enjoy it. So yeah, I think it's always kind of learning and evolving, right? Like you just got to kind of be that little bit better based on each day or each thing that doesn't quite go optimally. And that's all you can focus upon. I don't think any of us are perfect in what we want to do. We just want to try and be a little bit better.
Absolutely. And as responsibilities grow and mount, and generally as we grow in our lives, you can't possibly look to maintain a level, let alone exceed a level, any sort of level of existence. We're not talking about success here, even. We're talking about existing. You're not going to be able to maintain an existence by being the same person that you were like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? And I think that's a point that we've got to be very, very mindful of, team, is that for a lot of us that are trying to search for this high performance thing, whatever it is, or whatever success looks like for you, understanding that yes, you will have a capacity to be able to achieve up to a certain point by being who you are now. There's no way known that you're going to be able to stay as the person that you are and expect to be able to grow any further than where you are now. And it's a really, really good, I'm really glad that Nico was sort of open by saying that, that boundary setting is something that I really, really struggle with, because for a lot, especially, I would say young parents, especially, because we feel that we should be everything to everyone. I think that's something that a lot of us tend to struggle with quite a lot, is especially when you become a dad, you feel like you have to be the best dad, the best auctioneer, the best business owner, the best colleague, the best mate, all that sort of stuff. You have to be the best. And it's impossible. It's just not achievable. But I think if you can make the most of the time that you are in certain situations, certain scenarios, and boundary setting is a skill that is most definitely, you can learn it, but we don't realize how important boundary setting is either, not just for us, but for those around us as well, right? I mean, you just said this. I mean, I've got no doubt that kiddo would much prefer her old man to be there tonight, right? As opposed to earning an extra couple of quid. It's something that I've fallen foul of consistently, which is something that really grinds on me. And it's something that I'm working on in terms of boundaries. But we don't realize that we sometimes forego boundaries for a short-term dopamine hit, when the long-term ramifications of not having a boundary, not honoring those boundaries, shall we say, can be way more detrimental than the initial value, right?
Yep. Spot on, Matt. Spot on. And at that age, little things are really important to her. And that was a real catalyst for Sundays. Like, I never resent working. The only day that I really probably had in the back of my mind I would not want to be here is when I was working Sundays. Because when we didn't have little kids, it probably didn't matter as much. But as soon as you have little kids and Sundays like family day and you're leaving to go and call auctions, it does change things. So yeah, that was something that was a big decision, but you're doing these for big long-term payoffs, I think, in the scheme of things.
For sure. Nico, I could, you know that we could yarn for a little while, but I'm very, very conscious that you are a very busy chap, and it's nice to feel wanted, mate. And I'm sure you're being wanted by plenty of people these days. Justin Nickerson, thank you so much for joining me. One last question that we always ask everyone is we're always looking to head to the next version of high performance for ourselves in our lives. What is the one thing that you're working on right now that you feel that you really need to get better at? And you mentioned boundaries before. Is there anything else that you feel that you really need to work on to improve?
Being more present. So wherever I am, being the best and most present version of myself that I can be in that moment. So that can mean, not if I'm at home, for example, with kids, not being on my phone, or if it's that I'm talking to someone, like being actively involved in the conversation, not my mind being somewhere else, or those kinds of things. If I'm running, being present in my running, like not just ticking a box, but actually like being present. So again, it's a bit of a cliche and it's a bit sort of airy fairy and spiritual, but being present is one that is something I need to work on, and something that I'm trying to get better at.
I think it's something that society's struggling with, like, ad nauseum. I think so many of us have dramas with that because there is so much noise and so many distractions, so many things that can just flick your attention away from where you need to be. And again, when you talk about interacting with other people, if it's just a one-on-one conversation and you can't hold attention for more than a few sentences, then the energy like you said with crowds, the energy does translate into lack of connection, lack of trust, lack of understanding almost, right? So I think that being present thing is so important, and especially if you are a parent to young kids, like you might think that you've got all the time in the world, but the ability to be present now is going to pay you off down the track in terms of how present your kids are with you when you want it back. So team, look, Nico, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate this, mate. I really, really do. It was such a good conversation. Normally me and him, we talk shot auctions and that's about it. So it's really, really cool to have a proper chat with the man. Team, on behalf of Justin and myself, thank you so much for joining us. Me and Nico tried really hard to not get too geek into the auctioneering thing because we're both suckers for it. So hopefully, I'm sure you will have gained value. There's lots and lots of things that I'm sure you'll have taken in your notes. I'll make sure that Nico's details are in the show notes if you do want to reach out in any way, shape, or form. He is one of the easier guys to find and watch via his auctions or via his work in the training space. Until next time, though, team, on behalf of Nico and myself, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, healthy, happy, and have yourselves a wonderful day. We'll speak to you soon.